Okay. Thank you, sir. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So in the last class, we had a few technical issues due to which I had to stop early. Um, and I will be continuing from the last class. I hope there are a few people who have joined in. All right. Okay. So, in the last class, let me just recapitulate. We did barriers to communication and we understood what noise was, and we looked at channel noise, semantic noise, which are external and internal respectively. And then we will today move on to strategies to overcome barriers to communication, 7 C's of effective communication, and listening. Um, so people are joining in. All right. Hello. Good afternoon. Muskan, Manish, Bhavna, Chetna, Shiksha, Shubh, Kimti, Kimti, Kamran. Thank you for joining in. So let's start. Yeah. So we were looking at semantic noise, which included limited vocabulary. For example, if you go to a foreign place and you're not aware of the language, and there'll be a communication, there'll be a barrier to your communication. Then incompatibility between verbal and non-verbal, your gestures, your facial expressions are not compatible with what you are saying, right? Then you have varied perception due to different backgrounds, such as cultural. For example, if you go to a city different than yours, you perhaps go to a smaller town. So it requires you to behave and talk in a certain manner. Then wrong assumptions and inferences. We end up having wrong assumptions about the people, or we end up having wrong assumptions about anyone that we meet, right? Or someone that we are working with. So there, then blocked categories and categorical thinking, which include, like, if you get a mail from a teacher, we might assume, oh my god, there'll be another assignment, but what if it's a holiday, right? And then emotional psychosocial unsettled states, which include, of course, if one is depressed or one is anxious, one is nervous, and we just go and tell him some happy news and he does not react accordingly, then that can be a problem, right? So we should be aware of who is feeling what and what time should be a good time to communicate. All right. So then we move on to the overcoming, how to overcome the barriers to effective communication, improving communication skills, right? How well can we communicate what we have to say? How well are we going to say what we have in our mind or share our opinion? Then having complete knowledge over everything, or anything that we wish to talk about, right? If you go and attend a scientific seminar, if you attend a seminar that's perhaps happening on physics, and you don't know anything on physics, but you are sitting in the audience and interrupting people, what is this? What is that? So that's not going to happen, right? That will obviously will make you feel that you don't know anything, and it will make the others feel that, what are you even doing there? You're like a fish out of water, right? Then control over emotion. If you're angry, if you're sad, if you're nervous, we should be careful, or we should be mindful to communicate, and we should be mindful of other people's communication, emotional states too. Then communication with confidence. Whatever we know, whatever we are aware of, we should be communicating it with a confident nature, an attitude of confidence, right? Then avoiding physical distraction. When I'm talking to you, instead of looking at your phones or instead of scrolling on your Instagram or looking out of the window, what you should do is you should focus on what the other person is saying. Then appropriate channel, of course. Like we're having a class here on Microsoft Teams, but instead I chose to do it on a WhatsApp group, just sending you notes and saying that, you know what, this is your class, it's over, Okay, but that's not going to happen. It's going to cause a barrier in communication because so many of you won't know what to do with that information, right? Then provision for feedback. Like I said, it refers to all of the previous classes before that communication will only consider be complete if the other person is able to give a feedback, if the other person has understood what you are trying to say to him. Okay, then strategies to overcome the barriers of communication. First, identify the problem. Wherein lies the problem, right? Is it the channel issue? Is it the language issue? What is the issue? Then find the cause or barrier. If when we have identified the problem, then we'll find the cause or the barrier. Okay, this is the barrier. It's an external problem, so we'll fix it, right? If it's an internal problem like we do in language, then we will find someone who can speak that language. Then work on alternative solutions. What are the alternative solutions that can be used if there is a barrier in communication, if we cannot if we cannot understand what the other person is saying, or if the other person cannot understand what we are trying to say? Then opt for the best solution. What is the best solution to this problem that we are facing? And then follow up rigorously, right? And then try to clear up what the issue was at the end. Then the 7 C's of communication. Oftentimes you get this question a lot as long answers that please write a detailed note on 7 C's of communication. Okay, so what are the 7 C's of communication? Clear, concise, concrete, correct, coherent, complete, and courteous. All right. So 7 C's of effective communication are, these norms apply both in written as well as oral communication. Okay, these norms apply both to verbal communication, which include written or oral communication, and they are completeness. Any communication must be complete in the sense that the message should convey all the facts required for the comprehension of the message, right? You have everything that you need to communicate with the other party, with the other person. If you do not have all the facts, then you are not in a position to send the message. You are not in the position to talk about the thing that you think that you are ready for. Okay, then conciseness. Conciseness refers to the fact that while communicating, one should try to make a message as short as possible to make it effective. Conciseness in communication not only saves time, but it also is cost effective and highlights the message, making it more appealing and comprehensible for the audience or the reader. Right? For example, I think I used this before also, that if I'm here sitting and if I start talking to you about communication theory at length about things that may or may not be part of your syllabus, you won't get it, right? You won't understand. It will be obviously above you, and if it's not part of your syllabus, then you won't know what I am teaching, right? You will constantly struggle, you will constantly face problems regarding what is being taught to you, right? So it is always necessary to know what is the right information, and then try to put that in a bracket that can be easily conveyed, right? So we get 1 hour of AECC, and I try to bring as much information possible within that 1 hour so that you can understand what we are teaching or what your syllabus is about, right? Then consideration. Consideration in communication implies that the sender of message steps into the shoes of audience or the readers in terms of their viewpoints, background, mindset, education level, etc., to ensure that the message sent is comprehended properly by the receiver, right? So you need to be in the position of the receiver to understand if the message is reaching you or her, reaching you or anyone properly. right? For example, when a political leader gives a speech, he or she should be aware of what the common man or the ordinary man is going through, right? Until and unless he knows what the struggles of the ordinary man are, he won't know what to speak about, right? And sometimes that is what makes a good political leader, that he or she is aware of the things that are happening with the common man. All right, so you need to be in the shoes of the recipient or the receiver to understand what you are going to say to him. So a lot of more people have joined in. Good. Hello, Ria, Bhavya, Tisha, Aditya, Rupali, Sachin, Krishna, Kaushal. Um, so I was wondering, whenever we are having classes, it's always a good thing to keep writing. Just keep making notes. Like for example, if I'm teaching you 7 C's, just write 7 C's and then write completeness, conciseness, right? And this will only help you to remember, once the classes are over, what happened in this particular class, right? And if you are just going to just view it as as some television set is being on, as a television set is being placed in front of you, then you might forget. So it's always a good thing to just note the keywords that are being taught to you and which can later, give you an idea about what has been taught. All right. Okay, so keep writing the keywords that are, being taught. Okay, then we'll move on to clarity. Clarity. Clarity in communication implies that the message should be as clutter-free as possible, that it is easily understandable. To put a message across with clarity, one needs clarity of thought. And one has clarity of thought, one can use exact, appropriate, and specific words to express oneself. Right, so we need to be very clear about what we are trying to talk about, or what message are we trying to send, right? We need to be very clear. For example, if you're talking to your friend about the last class, you need to be very clear about this is what ma'am taught us, and this is what the commerce teacher taught us, and this is what the other economics teacher taught us, right? You cannot just, bring a lot of information and say here and there, this is what happened, and then that happened, and this happened. So you cannot be giving a lot of unclear information to the other person, which might confuse him or her. Okay. Then concreteness. Concreteness in communication implies being particular and clear rather than fuzzy and general. One should be specific in terms of quoting figures and facts, as it makes communication effective and trustworthy, and there is less chance of the meaning being misinterpreted. So what is concreteness in communication implies? Being particular and clear, right? So you should have concrete facts. If you're giving a presentation in your office, right, regarding what is your what happened in the last quarter of your sales, you should have numbers. You should have 10% increase or 15% increase because these quarters did really well, right? So you should have exact points for that, right? Unless you have exact points, you cannot tell your manager that we did a very good job or we did a really bad job, right? So you should have points about whatever that you are trying to put across. Even for your exams, for example, if you're giving examples to in your questions, then you should be very, very sure that this is the example that is going to talk about this particular theory, or this is the example that will talk about this particular theorem, right? So it should not be something that makes no sense, but you should be very sure about the information that you're writing, that it should make sense to the other person or the receiver. Then courtesy. Courtesy in communication implies that the sender should receive the receiver in terms, respect the receiver in terms of being polite, judicious, reflective, and enthusiastic. It creates a positive atmosphere of communication, and that leads to effective communication. Of course, you should be courteous to anyone and everyone that is present to you, right? Whoever you meet, any stranger or anyone that you know, you should always be courteous. You cannot be rude to anyone, you cannot be offensive to anyone, right? Your communication will only be considered a good communication, or a communication that went well for both sides, when you're courteous to the other person, right? For a manager and an employee, a manager needs to be courteous to his employee, right? If he's all the time angry, or if he's all the time throwing attitude, then of course the employee will go into his shell. He won't be able to do well. He'll be missing a lot of things in terms of work. So you need to be courteous of the other person, then only the communication between the two can be of good nature, right? Then correctness. Correctness in communication implies that there are no grammatical errors, no dubiousness in facts and figures, and correctness in communication builds up trust between the sender and receiver and makes communication effective, right? So much similar to concreteness, right? Concreteness and correctness, right? That you should be concrete about the facts. You should know what facts you are presenting. And correctness is the facts that you are presenting, they are well researched on. You have evidence to prove that they are right, right? Concreteness, you cannot bring general ideas, right? You should be very sure of what examples you are bringing on the table. And for correctness, those examples should be right. All right. So these are the 7 C's of effective communication: completeness, conciseness, consideration, clarity, concreteness, courteousness, and correctness. So for example, you can write the keywords down. You can write 7 C's of effective communication that were taught today: a completeness, conciseness, consideration, clarity, concreteness, courtesy, and correctness. Then we move on to the last topic of our unit, that is listening, right? So what is listening? Listening is first evaluative listening. While listening to the arguments in a board meeting, the directors of a company evaluate the arguments of the speaker while listening, and it can be called evaluative listening. Right? So whenever your arguments are being evaluated by someone, for example, you're also part of a speech, right? So part of a debate competition, sorry. So your comments or whatever that you're saying on the stage is going to be evaluated, and the prize will be decided according to that. So that is evaluative listening, when you are listening to the arguments which are going to be evaluated. Then discriminative listening. Discriminative listening is, suppose in the annual dinner of a company, the director is chatting with all the staff of the organization informally, where some are listening to what he's saying while others are busy with their own discussions. This can be an example of discriminative listening. Something also happens in our class, right? That I'm speaking continuously, but some of the backbenchers are perhaps not listening, or they're creating ruckus in a class, right? So I keep on saying that pay attention, but some parts of the class are clearly not interested, or they are busy with something else. Then appreciative listening. When one listens with a kind of appreciation for what is spoken, it is called appreciative listening. For example, if someone is presenting the financial report of a company and people are nodding heads in appreciation, it can be seen as appreciative listening, right? And if you are going to a seminar and you really like a paper that someone is reading and you go, yes, yeah, that's a good paper. Or if you attend a political leader's rally, right, and he talks about the points that are closest to you: sanitation, women's health, women's empowerment, education, and then you go, yes, these are the points that need to be talked about, right? So it is appreciative listening. And then emphatic or empathetic listening. When one listens to the speaker with empathy or sympathy, like when you understand, it's empathy, and when you feel bad for someone else, sympathy, then it is called emphatic listening. For example, if in a negotiation one party is presenting his or her view and other party sympathizes with his or her point of view, then it is called emphatic listening, right? Even it happens when you're talking to a friend and he's going through something and you are there to understand what he's going through. You understand what he's going through or what he's feeling right now. That's emphatic listening. All right. So this is the Unit 2, Part 3, where we looked at barriers to communication. This is the this is the Part 3, that's the last part of Unit 2, and we'll be starting with a new unit today. Barriers to communication, strategies to communication, 7 C's of effective communication, and listening. So we looked at what are barriers to communication. Wherever the intended message encoded by the sender is not grasped by the receiver. When there's a failure to communication, right? When the desired information or knowledge or emotion becomes a barrier, right? Then in barriers to communication, we looked at physical barriers, we looked at semantic barriers, cultural barriers, psychological or barriers caused by varying perception of reality. And mind you, when I'm using this diagram, and if they are here divided into these many categories, but later when we look at them, under one umbrella term of internal barriers and external barriers, it does not mean that we have not completed them. For every for every book that you refer to, or for every time you Google on your computers regarding barriers to communication, you will find different subheadings, you will find different headings that talk about the same thing but in a different manner. So don't get intimidated, don't think that we didn't cover this. All right. Then noise. What is noise? Does not merely refer to the physical noise but any barrier that presents the flow of communication. All right, any barrier. It can be just physical noise, but it can be a wrong choice of medium, wrong choice of environment, not knowing the language. That can also be considered as bad noise. Then, like I've said, it does not only mean that all of the things that we have studied only will refer to channel noise and semantic noise, but this can be talked about in a different manner. If you are looking at a different book, but that does not mean, I'll repeat again, that we have not covered the syllabus, or we are speaking different things and the other book is speaking different things, right? So in channel noise, we looked at physical noise, like if you're a crowd or there's actual people screaming, then use of inappropriate media. Are we trying to communicate through some wrong media? Like if you're not taking classes on Teams, are we going to take classes on Snapchat? Multiple transfer stations. The more people that are included in a conversation or a discussion, the more it will be the information will be changed, or it will change according to the receiver, right? When the receiver passes the information on to another person, it will keep changing, just like Chinese whisper. Then information overload. The information that we have provided, if it's too much and the information that is crucial in it is just one line, then it makes no sense. Then fear of superiors, that are we like really scared of the people who are above us, therefore we feel intimidated in raising a question? Negative presuppositions, again, negative presupposition is that we are assuming something is going to happen wrongly, or the email that has come in is wrong. Or communication selectivity, we are perhaps not listening to the lecture right now when we're focusing on a mobile phone. Then poor listening skills, of course, that you're constantly being distracted here and there. And we looked at semantic noise. We completed semantic noise already at the beginning of this lecture. So limited vocabulary, incompatibility between verbal and non-verbal, varied perceptions, wrong assumptions, blocked categories, and emotional states. Then we looked at strategies, identify the problem, find the cause, work on the alternative solutions, and opt for the best solution, and follow up rigorously on the barrier. We looked at 7 C's, which include clear, concise, concrete, correct, coherent, complete, and courteous. And then we looked at listening, which involved evaluative listening, discriminative listening, appreciative listening, and emphatic listening. All right. So then let's move on to Unit 3. We were running a little late because of the last class. So let's start with Unit 3. Unit 3 has speaking skills. Okay. Unit 3 is speaking skills. So let's start with speaking skills. Oral communication, features of oral communication. And here we'll be looking at oral communication, advantages and disadvantages of oral communication, and monologue and dialogue. Features of oral communication. Oral communication is most spontaneous. It's mostly spontaneous, like what we are doing right now, right? I may read, but I can also make things up, right? I can also explain to you in a manner that I think is suitable, right? So it is something spontaneous, though there are oral communications that are well thought out. It is a saying that one should think before speaking, but if one thinks too much, then she will not be able to speak at all. Therefore, there is a need to strike a balance between spontaneity and planning, right? So because it is spontaneous, we need to, of course, think what we are going to say, but it's not like if we just go into now what do I say? Right? So that's not going to happen. I cannot just keep on thinking and thinking and thinking and then say, what is the right way of saying that? No, you should just be clear enough, or you should give yourself time enough to think and then speak. Right? You just cannot go into this quietness and thinking that, yeah, let me first think and then I'll speak. No, because it's spontaneous and you're supposed to react quickly. For example, in an interview, if a question is asked to you, you cannot go like, please give me 10 minutes and then I'll respond. You can't do that. They expect you to react quickly. They expect you to respond quickly. Then oral communication is mostly spontaneous. Therefore, it has its corollary effects, such as the communication is faster and dynamic, and feedback is instant in comparison to written communication, right? For example, right now when I'm teaching you, if you do not understand anything, you will put it in the chat box, right? But for example, if I were to send you some email and then you don't understand it, and then you will send me an email, I didn't check my mail, and then you won't understand it. So that becomes like a really long and tedious process. So because it's spontaneous in nature, or oral communication, you get it quickly, and then you can give me feedback as and when you've been spoken to. Then, as there is a pressure of thinking faster in oral communication, therefore there are a lot of hesitations, fillers, and repetitions. A lot of sounds between words and sentences spoken, and these are called non-fluencies. We did this earlier. That, for example, if I'm thinking, I'll go like, okay. So that's all right because we are giving ourselves 2-3 seconds to think, and it's okay, right? So we are filling these gaps with our okay, right? Then two persons two persons speak a language in the same way. Oral communication or speech communication or speech varies across gender, class, region, economic and educational background, etc. Moreover, the same person does not always speak in the same way. With different people, with different circumstances, the speech of a person varies as she adapts to the situation and modifies her or his speech, right? So two persons can never speak the same thing. For example, if you have a friend and he is from Punjab, right, and you are from Delhi, so he is going to speak in a different way. His accent will be different. His knowledge about culture will be different. He perhaps will know more about Punjabi culture than you, right? And you will know more about Delhi than he would, right? And you will speak in an accent that is perhaps more common to Delhi, right? Then similarly, if it is a young boy, right, you meet someone from school, right, in Delhi, and you are an adult working in Delhi. So what is the slangs or what is the common knowledge of the school boy will be entirely different to what yours is, right? So every time, people are passing out from school or they're using social media, the language changes, right? You use words like lit, you use words like YOLO, FOMO, and etc. etc. Whereas the other person or the adult is not using that language, right? So no two people can speak the same language because they might be from different cultures, they might be from different backgrounds, they might be from different ages, genders, economic and educational backgrounds. Okay, then oral communication is usually thought to be casual or informal in the sense that most casual communication happens in the oral mode. In that sense, oral communication or speech is very significant in forming interpersonal relationships because it happens quickly, it's more dynamic, spontaneous in nature. You can talk to other person as much as you can because it's informal. But when we use a formal communication, we have to think very, very clearly about what we are trying to send a message, how we are going to do it. Are we going to do it through Teams? Are we going to do it through Google Meet? Are we going to meet our boss? Are we going to send an email to him? Right? But oral communication is usually more casual and informal, and that's why it's more quick, right? And it helps in building interpersonal relationships. Then oral communication or speech is loosely structured in the sense that while speaking, we do not tend to follow the grammatical rules all the time, as the main objective of oral communication is not to present the thoughts in a structural and grammatical way, but to put across the information, idea, emotion of the speakers to the listeners in an effective way so that it is easily understood by the listener. Right? So because we are not following rules over here, we're not following any grammatical rules over here, we can speak faster and quicker and more spontaneously. And but when we are writing it down, we have to be very mindful of the grammatical rules. Are we following a perfect format, right? Then in speech or oral communication, the non-verbal cues are very significant. The meaning of the tone, the pitch, the rhythm, the tempo, the volume, the gestures, the posture, our body movements, they're very, very important, right? The paralinguistic features that we looked at, they're very important. How are we communicating our ideas with the use of our face, our hands, our tone, our pitch? then it is a great advantage of oral communication that the listener can interrupt, right, if required, and clarify his or her doubt whenever he wants to, right? So right now when I'm teaching, you can obviously tell me to stop, right, and explain this or that concept. If you're talking to a friend and if he gets a call from his mother, and then you're like, just a second, let me take this call, and then you will be like, repeat what you were saying, right? Then pauses and silences are pregnant with meaning in oral communication. So if you're talking to a person and then you go quiet for some time, then that silence will also mean something. The silence can mean that he or she is judging you. That silence can mean that he or she is thinking. That silence can mean that, he does not believe in what you are saying, right? It happens a lot. If you know that if a person is lying in front of you, so you take some, you go silent, then you're like, okay, what do I do about that now, right? So you are thinking, or you are taking time to pass a judgment on the other person's character, matlab, idea. Then, in informal oral communication, slang is acceptable. In oral communication with the friends or peer groups, we use slangs, right? We use this new Instagram lingo. Instagram lingo that we are so common, or okay with whenever we speak, right? Like I said, logo, so why I'm saying logo, FOMO, YOLO, and lit, and बहुत hard. Yeah, that's something that I've heard a lot from people, right? Then in oral communication, we use a lot of contractions such as I wanna, I gonna, I don't want, I don't, for do not. So there's a lot of bringing together of words. We do not somehow pronounce the words separately, but we somehow bring them together. Then oral communication is time bound, right, in the sense that when we are speaking with Hockett design features, that with human communication, once it is out of our mouth, it is gone, right? It's not going to stay in the air for a really long time. The words disappear. Okay, so these are the features of oral communication. Let me just take a 2-minute break to rest my voice. Yeah, Siddhi, if you're not feeling well, you can leave. You don't have to ask me. It's all right. Bhavna, conciseness is when there's a lot of information and you choose the right one. Sorry, not the right one. You choose the important information to pass it on. Like, for example, your friend is absent from college, and you're not going to tell him कि आज ये हुआ, janitor ने आज class साफ करी और ये सब. No, even though it happened in front of you, you will only say, "Ma'am ने आज ये important points discuss करे और ये किया." So all of the information, you will try to bring it down to like 1 or 2 sentences that you think will give an idea to the other person, what did you do today in class. So conciseness is always like we say ki, in your exams, do not fill 5-6 pages, just write 2 pages that should make sense, right? That's conciseness. Yes, oral communication, both formal and informal, it's possible. Nikhil, like you're talking to your friend on the phone, it's informal. You're talking to me, it's formal, right? You come and speak to me about the class, it becomes formal. And when you're talking to your friend, it becomes informal. Shivam, completeness is whenever you're trying to talk about something, you should have all the facts, right? Like Shivam, if I tell you, make an assignment or this or that, right? And until and unless you have all the facts, then only you can, write an assignment. But if you do not have all the facts, then you wouldn't know what to write, right? You will make up stuff, right? You will talk about the topic wrongly, right? So you should have all the information, and then whatever that you're trying to say, it should be complete in itself, right? It should be complete in itself. What is PYQ? What is PYQ? Someone has written discuss PYQ. Explain what? If you can find the previous year question papers, then sure, why not? Yeah, if you can find previous year question papers, maybe talk to your seniors or someone so they can give you the question papers. So that would be really nice. Okay, then let's move on to the advantages and disadvantages of oral communication. What are the advantages of orally communicating? It's time saving. You get a quick feedback like I'm getting right now. What is PYQs? Immediately someone tells me previous year question papers. Then application in special areas, right? For example, if you are if you're told that you have a viva, you cannot write things down, you have to speak. Then, for example, if you get a phone call, you need to answer then and there. You cannot say, ki, I'll email you or I'll send a WhatsApp. No, right? So in certain areas, you have to speak, right? Oral communication is necessary. In a political rally, you cannot tell the audience that are there for their political leader read a speech that, you know what, I'm going to send you an email. No, you cannot do that. So in certain areas, you have to speak no matter what. When you're presenting in front of your manager, you cannot say that, I'll just send an email and that's that. No. Then powerful means of persuasion and control. A lot of people do that. Whoever becomes really powerful in terms of politics, in terms of international relations, in terms of anything, where there is power, there is the sense of speaking quite powerfully. There is this sense of authority that comes with speaking orally. So you need to be a good person, you need to be a good orator, or you need to have exceptional oral skills so that you can sway the other person around, right? So it is a good means of persuasion and control, right? We see this a lot happening in movies as well, that a lot of these villains, they speak so well, or they'll give the other person such false promises that he will immediately say yes to. Then saving money, of course, because it's quick, it's faster, you're saving money. Then effective for all, that even if you're illiterate, if you cannot write or read, but you can speak, right? So it is the right way to communicate to anyone and everyone. Then it is more reliable, because if you are speaking quickly and if you just tell the matter that this is what is happening, then the other person will understand it, right? And instead of reading it, and then he might not be able to understand what you have written, he might have misinterpreted it wrongly, so that can be a problem. Then flexibility, of course, like if you get feedback, you will change the language, you will speak more efficiently, or you'll speak you'll use lesser words, like, that may not make sense to the other person. You'll speak slowly if the other person cannot understand the language, right? Then complete understanding, that, like I've said, it connects to the idea of flexibility. If you go to a different place and then you don't know the language, but you tell them to speak slowly, then you will understand what he or she is trying to say. Then disadvantages of oral communication, that the emotion, if I'm angry, it may reflect in my voice. If I'm sad, it may reflect in my voice. There is no legal validity, that once the words have come out and you have not recorded it or written it down, it holds no value in the court of law. Then absence of permanent record, again just like this, that a presentation is made but there is no written record of what words were used or how did he say it. Then problem for distance people, that if people are living really far, you cannot really talk to them orally. It can be a problem, like sometimes when you are even on the call, the signal goes, or there can be network issues. Then unsuitable for lengthy message, you cannot talk for hours and hours and hours, so instead you just write, just give the important information and then you say we'll talk later, or I'll send an email. Then confused speech, sometimes the person is unsure of what to speak, but he has to speak, right? So it can lead to confused speech. Then greater chance of misunderstanding, right? So if one is speaking in their own sense, right, it can be misinterpreted, or it can, if he's angry, it can reflect badly, even though he's giving you the right information, right? Then distortion of meaning, again, it's just like multiple transfer stations, Chinese whisper, that if I say something, you hear something, then you tell the other person some other thing, then the other person will say some other thing. So it just keeps on like that. Then uneasiness of fixed responsibility, that of course, because it is once it is escaped our mouths, it cannot be held responsible for anything, and then I'll say, you know what, maine ye nahi kaha tha, I didn't say that. So suddenly it happens, like, you're not fixing responsibility to anyone. Then risk of leak of secret information, because sometimes we cannot keep secrets, we just let things go and we just tell our friends and all. Okay, so these are the advantages and disadvantages of oral communication. Then we move on to monologue and dialogue. It's very simple. Just remember that it's dialogue. Monologue is from you to them, when you are speaking and someone is listening or they are listening. But dialogue is two-way. It's from you to them and from them to you. Okay, so monologue is something that we have seen quite often in plays, whenever you are reading Shakespeare plays, for example, or whenever you have studied in school, whenever you had studied literature in school, you must have noticed in drama that a person just goes to the side and talks to himself, right? So a monologue, as the term suggests, is an oral communication which is conveyed by one person, or it may also be a long one-sided conversation. The Greek origin of the word means speaking alone. In the sense when one person does all the talking, it can be said that when a speaker monopolizes any conversation because his or her ideas and knowledge, or for an other reason which puts him or her in a privileged position of making others listen to him or her, then it is a monologue. As a monologue is when a single person does all the talking, therefore it is essential in the monologist or the speaker is well prepared, logical, coherent, and listener friendly in what he/she says. Otherwise, it will tend to be boring. When we speak, it fades away fast. Therefore, it is important that the speaker keeps in mind that he/she is not very fast, uses vocabulary which is easily understandable, and links ideas in such a manner that the listeners find it logical. right? Then dialogue. In literature, dialogue refers to a conversation between two or more characters. The term dialogue is derived from the Greek word dialogus, which means conversation. And you're quite aware of what dialogue is. Dialogue plays a very important role in all fiction. Many literary forms use this as a major technique. Then it shows that the dialogues that portray the way it is the dialogues that portray the way the characters interact with, they make their decisions and change. And dialogues also help the readers to understand the personalities of the characters. Then what is the difference between a monologue and a dialogue? Monologue is a speech given by one character to express his or her thoughts and feelings to the other character or to the audience, right? Like I've said, in a play, when you are looking at a play, when you're viewing a play, then this character goes on the side and tells the audience, "This is what I'm feeling," or this is what is going on in my mind," right? So that's a monologue. So when one person is speaking and the other person is only listening, that's a monologue. But a dialogue is between a conversation between two or more people. Okay, monologue involves one character, one person who's speaking. Dialogue can involve two characters or three or four characters or as many characters, right? So we are having a dialogic conversation. That means he's also telling me information, I'm also giving him information, right? But in monologue, I'm the one who's telling him something. I'm the one who's giving a speech. Then monologue is a speech given by a character. Dialogue is a conversation between characters. And monologues are less commonly used than dialogues, and dialogues are more commonly used. All right, so don't get intimidated that these are terms that are used in literary aspects, but it is something that you already know, right? So monologue is something like, for example, if you have seen a lot of these Karthik Aaryan movies, you are aware of Karthik Aaryan movies? This what was this? Have you seen? Are you aware of Karthik Aaryan movies? The one Sonu ki tweet Sonu ki Can you just write down the name? I don't remember that Sonu ki wali film. Have you seen that movie? What's the name of that film? Anyone else? Have you seen the Karthik Aaryan movies? So there is this always, he does this, in most of his movies, yeah, Sonu ki T2, where he goes on this, he starts by speaking, then he goes on speaking for like 10 minutes, right? So that's like a monologue. That's a monologue. Nobody interrupts him, right? He's the one who's like, then he did that, and he did that, and blah, 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 blah. So, yeah. So, yes. So yeah, so a lot of you have people, Sonoki T2, I cannot remember the name, right? So you must have seen even in other films of his, the other two films that he did before Sonoki, T2K. So he goes on this, for 10 minutes, he's just like his friends are standing or the people around him are standing, and then he'll just go on talking and talking and talking. So he's telling what he's feeling, he's telling what he's going through. So that is a monologue. Nobody's interrupting him, nobody's telling him, nobody's having a proper dialogic conversation. He's the one who is just going on and on and on about the information, right? So that is a monologue. Yeah, a lot of people have written that. Okay, so that is a monologue that you see happens a lot in films or in dramas, especially when you're reading a play. Then you will find a lot of characters giving a monologue. And a dialogue is, what a dialogue is, whenever two or three people are conversing between each other, or the dialogues between two characters, that's a dialogue. Okay. Okay, so you know what I'm saying. So you understand what's the difference between a monologue and a dialogue now. Monologue is, just remember this particular image, you from them. One person is speaking to the other, and in dialogue, both of them are speaking, or one or more, two or more, or as many people are, as many people that you wish to speak to can be included. Kimti, evaluative listening is, for example, Kimti, you are in a viva, right? You are in a viva and you are being evaluated for the answer that you give. Okay, that's evaluative listening. Or, for example, you are in a debate competition and the arguments that you're giving will be evaluated whether or not you're going to win the competition or not. Okay. Yes, Muskan. Okay, so I don't know about the show. I haven't seen it, but I have seen him talking to the celebrities, right? So that is definitely dialogue, but I have not seen the part where he gives the monologue, like he gives a stand-up thing. So yeah, so if you're saying that I think before the guests are called in, he gives a monologue. So yeah, you're right, absolutely, Muskan. Yeah, yeah, Manthan. Yes, Manthan, you're right. Yes. Anuradha, depending on the context, they can be mass communication. Monologue can be definitely mass communication. It can be part of mass communication, but it may not necessarily be. Like for example, Anuradha, if you're watching a film, like we are giving the example of Sonu Ki T 2 Ki Sweetie. Over there, it is not mass communication. Karthik is just shown talking to his friends, right? So that monologue is basically an information, a way of passing information to his friends. He's not talking to like 200 or 300 people, right? So what is the context that needs to be understood, whether the monologue or dialogue is happening on a public platform, right? So for example, if you look at NDTV has a lot of these events where the channel calls someone, right? For example, Amitabh Bachchan is called on stage and there's this news reporter speaking, so that's a dialogue, right? The reporter asks Amitabh Bachchan questions and then he responds and then the audience members also ask questions, so that's a dialogue, right? But a monologue is if someone call gets up on stage and says his or her piece. Okay. Delivering a speech, yes, but Akash, when I'm saying monologue, it's more about, some personal feelings, some personal thoughts that are being expressed. Yeah, so by the way, if you are all on Microsoft Teams, let me just show you something. Wait. So if you go on Microsoft Teams and here are Teams. Wait, I'll just share the screen with you. So here is the screen, right? So these are my groups, and you are, I think, part of these two. And BCom Honors Semester 22. So is this your group? Can you see yourself being part of this group, or um, like, are you part of this group? Or are you part of this group? So there are groups already. You know what I'm saying, right? So there are these two groups. Are you guys part of any? You're not part of it? So can you add yourself? You can add yourself. I'm not part of this group. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. You keep on saying, ma'am, be a part of this group, be a part of that group. You already have two groups on your Microsoft Teams, of which I am a part of. So eventually, just figure out from your friends how to be part of those groups, because the technical team added me, so I don't know. But yeah, so I think you can ask your friends, how can you be added. No, there are no assignments. There are no assignments. Okay, and Tejasvi and Payal and all you guys, you can help out your classmates on WhatsApp to know how to be part of that particular group. All right, so I'll stop over here, and then we will continue with speaking skills in the next class. All right. I was a little bit fast today because I had to complete the last class. There was there was a part entirely, sorry. There was something that had to be completed in the next in the previous class, but it couldn't because we were having technical errors, remember? So that's why I couldn't do it. So that's why I had to complete it today. So anyway, let's meet in the next class then on Saturday. Okay, then bye bye.